When the bridge beneath Karen's BMW finally gave way, the sound wasn't like the dramatic scenes in movies. There was no single explosive crash. Instead, it started with a low, grinding groan that rippled through the air, a warning just before the timbers surrendered. Her headlights tilted toward the creek, and for a brief, frozen second, the reflection of her terrified face shimmered on the water, then vanished in the splash. I stood on the opposite bank beside the half-bent bridge closed sign, watching in disbelief. She actually did it, I thought. She ignored every warning. But to understand how we got to this moment, I need to go back to the beginning. The bridge had been my private headache ever since I bought the lakefront property 3 years earlier. It wasn't a grand structure, just a narrow timber span across the creek that cut through my land. It led to my private driveway and a small cul-de-sac shared by 3 homes, including mine. Technically, the HOA didn't own it, but that didn't stop them from behaving like they did. Built back in the 1970s, long before the HOA existed, the bridge had weathered decades of floods and storms, but then came Karen Dempsey, the newly elected HOA president. She was a perfectionist with a clipboard and the personality of a hornet. I met her the day I moved in. She was standing by the mailboxes, ruler in hand, measuring their height. "Hello," I said politely. Looked up as if I'd interrupted a sacred ritual. "You're the one who bought the right property," she said, not a question, a statement. "You'll need to repaint that fence, it's not HOA compliant." I explained that the fence wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. Her frown deepened. "Everything in this neighborhood is under the HOA, she declared. "We have standards." That was Karen's favorite word, standards, and my old sagging timber bridge didn't meet hers. A contractor I'd hired had already confirmed what I suspected. The supports were rotted, the structure unsafe for heavy vehicles, and its weight rating had dropped to nearly zero. So I did the responsible thing, I closed it. Heavy steel posts went up on both ends, bright orange warning signs were mounted, and reflective tape stretched across. Repairs were scheduled to start in 2 weeks. In the meantime, there was a perfectly fine alternate road looping around the hill, an extra 2 minutes of driving. Everyone understood. Everyone except Karen. The very first day the bridge was closed, Karen called me. "You can't just shut down a community bridge without board approval," she snapped. "It's not community property," I explained patiently. "It's part of my parcel. The previous owner maintained it, and I've done the same since I bought the place." "The HOA records don't show that," she countered. "So until I see proof, I'll treat it as shared infrastructure. Remove your barriers immediately." I told her she was welcome to come by and check the deed. She declined. "I don't need to," she said proudly. "I'm the HOA president." By day 2, she escalated. Someone whose handwriting was very familiar tore down all my warning signs overnight. I replaced them with reinforced steel stakes. The next morning, they were gone again. So I set up a trail camera facing the bridge. And sure enough, the footage captured her perfectly. Flashlight in hand, little dog tugging at the leash, ripping off my caution tape and tossing it into the creek as if it had personally insulted her. I printed a still frame from the footage and taped it to one of the steel posts with a message beneath. "Smile, you're on camera." That didn't sit well with her. The following afternoon, she stood at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, hair pulled back so tight it practically reshaped her face. "You're harassing me," she said, "recording me without consent." "Recording trespassers on my property is perfectly legal," I replied calmly. Answer was to threaten HOA fines for defacing common property. I reminded her again that the bridge wasn't common. She smiled, that cold, dangerous smile that always comes right before someone does something incredibly foolish. "We'll see about that." 2 days later, the HOA held an emergency meeting, all because of my bridge. I didn't bother going, but my neighbor Sam, who's lived here since the 80s, texted me a full play-by-play. Karen had stood up in front of everyone, claiming the bridge was critical community infrastructure and accusing me of infringing on residents' rights. Sam reminded her the HOA had no jurisdiction over my parcel. She fired back with, "Then why have I been using it for years?" That line stuck with me. Karen wasn't evil just for the sake of it, she was obsessed with control. The idea of losing even a sliver of authority made her unravel. The following weekend, I returned home from errands to find the barricades gone again. This time, the steel posts had been unscrewed. Someone had come prepared. My camera was missing too, the mount snapped clean. I called the sheriff's office. They took a report, but without footage there wasn't much they could do. Looks like vandalism, the deputy said. If you catch them again, call us right away. That night, a heavy rain began. By morning, the creek had swelled and the bridge sagged dangerously under the weight of debris pressing against its rotted supports. I reinforced the closure again, this time with a full metal fence and new red warning boards that read, "Danger, bridge unsafe." That afternoon, Karen drove by slowly, glaring at me through her car window with pursed lips. I could practically hear the thought in her head. "You think you can tell me what to do?" 3 hours later, I was in my workshop when I heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel followed by a metallic screech. My heart dropped. I rushed to the window and there she was, Karen in her silver BMW inching toward the bridge. The metal fence I'd installed was pushed aside. She had a wrench in her hand. She'd actually removed the bolts. I bolted outside yelling, "Stop, the bridge is closed." But she didn't stop. She rolled down her window and shouted back, "I have a meeting, I don't take orders from you." Then she hit the gas. The BMW made it halfway across before the timbers gave out. There was a sharp, bone-deep crack, then the deck sagged violently. Her front tires dropped, the rear wheels spun helplessly, and for a heartbeat the car hung there, headlights pointed up toward the sky. Then the entire structure folded inward, dumping the car into the muddy, rain-swollen creek below. Silence followed, broken only by the hissing engine and the sound of rain. I called 911 immediately. "Car in the creek off Timberline Road," I said. "Driver's alive, I think." Grabbing a rope from my shed, I ran down the bank. Karen had already climbed onto the roof of her sinking car, soaked to the bone, mascara streaking down her face, screaming that I had set her up. When the deputies arrived, she tried to accuse me of sabotaging the bridge. But I handed them everything: contractor reports, warning signs, dated photos, HOA emails. The deputy glanced at the paperwork, then at the wrecked BMW, then back at her. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "it looks like you ignored the signs." I didn't laugh out loud, not then, but I'll admit deep inside a part of me wanted to. Later that night, as the tow truck hauled her car out of the creek, Karen stood silently under her umbrella, drenched and furious. She didn't apologize, she didn't say a single word. But the next morning, there was a note in my mailbox. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. "I'll see you at the next HOA meeting." And that's when I knew this wasn't over. The bridge collapse should have ended everything. For most reasonable people, falling into a creek would have been a wake-up call, a moment of reflection, maybe even humility. But Karen wasn't reasonable. Was relentless. Within 48 hours, she reappeared like a bad sequel. Except this time, she wasn't wet, panicked, or embarrassed. She was polished, composed, and holding her clipboard like a weapon. It started Monday morning. I was out front stacking lumber for the replacement bridge when she strutted up my driveway in heels, stepping over muddy ground like the earth itself should be grateful. "You're liable," she said flatly, "for the damage to my car." I froze mid-stack. "Karen, the bridge was closed." "That doesn't matter, it's on community land, which makes you responsible for keeping it safe for everyone's use." "It's my land," I reminded her. "I've shown you the deed, the surveys, everything." "Cut me off, I've filed a formal claim. You'll hear from the HOA's legal representative." I almost laughed, but her self-righteous tone turned my reaction into a sigh. "You called your HOA lawyer?" "Correction," she said proudly, "our HOA lawyer." Then she turned and walked away, leaving nothing behind but expensive perfume and scorched ego. That was the beginning of Karen's next campaign, a bureaucratic war fought entirely through letters, fines, and meetings. Every day that week, something new showed up in my mailbox. A notice of violation for creating a hazard within community boundaries. A $500 emergency fine for obstructing HOA access routes. Another fine for improper signage. By Friday, I had a stack of papers thick enough to start a campfire. My wife Rachel told me to ignore it. "She's trying to get a rise out of you," she said. "You're feeding her by reacting." "I'm not feeding her," I replied. I'm documenting her insanity. Rachel smirked, that's still feeding her. Wasn't wrong, Karen thrived on attention, and the more I resisted, the more creative she became. When fines didn't rattle me, she switched tactics to social warfare. She began holding emergency board meetings at her house, always when I was working outside, so I'd look over and see clusters of neighbors drinking lemonade while she gestured toward my land like she was addressing the United Nations about human rights violations. Then came the rumors. Apparently, I had destroyed community infrastructure, endangered lives, and removed safety inspections to hide faults. The best one came from my neighbor Sam. She's telling people your insurance won't cover the collapse because you admitted guilt, he chuckled. She's even showing them your inspection report like it's proof. I wasn't angry, not yet. Honestly, I was almost impressed by how far she could twist the truth. But I also knew something important. Karen was dangerous when cornered. She wasn't just being difficult, she was trying to control the narrative. So I stopped reacting and started planning. First step, rebuild the bridge legally and thoroughly. I met with the county inspector, walked him through the damage, and filed a construction permit under my parcel ID. Everything was airtight. Then I hired a contractor, not the cheapest, but the most meticulous, to rebuild the bridge with steel reinforcements and proper certification. Ironically, the finished bridge would be stronger than anything the HOA had ever built. While the crew worked, I laminated the permit and posted it at the site. Then I installed motion-activated security cameras on both ends, live streaming to my phone and backed up to the cloud. For a few blissful days, there were no calls, no letters, no drive-bys. I almost believed it was over. Then on the fourth evening, my contractor called me. "Hey, we've got a problem," he said hesitantly. "What kind of problem?" "County says someone filed a complaint, stop work order, claims you're altering a community structure without HOA consent, inspectors coming tomorrow." I didn't need to ask who filed it. The next morning, Karen arrived with two bored-looking HOA board members in tow and a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. "Good morning," she chirped sweetly. "I see you're proceeding with unapproved construction." "It's approved by the county," I said. "Not by the HOA," she countered, "because the HOA owns this land." "No, it doesn't." Smiled, "We'll let the county decide that." When the inspector arrived, I handed him the survey and the permit. He flipped through, nodded, and turned to her. "Ma'am, this is private property, you don't have jurisdiction here." Smile cracked, "That can't be right." "It's right," he said firmly. "Unless your HOA wants to pay for the repairs, I suggest you let the owner handle it." Looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "We'll be reviewing our bylaws," she snapped before storming off with her entourage. It was glorious. But Karen wasn't the type to lose gracefully. Karen's defeat with the county inspector didn't slow her down, it fueled her. She doubled her efforts, except now she wasn't just coming after me, she was recruiting the neighborhood. It started with subtle things. People I'd wave to every morning suddenly stopped making eye contact. The couple who usually walked their dog past my house began crossing the street like my driveway had turned radioactive. A week later, flyers started appearing in mailboxes. Glossy, professional, clearly expensive. Community safety alert. Unauthorized construction on shared property threatens your access and security. Join the emergency HOA meeting to protect your rights. No names, of course, but everyone knew exactly who it was about. The emergency meeting was held in the community clubhouse. Rachel told me to ignore it, but I showed up anyway. I didn't say a word, just stood in the back and listened. Karen was at the front like a politician at a rally, packing with her binder in hand. She painted a picture of a reckless landowner who ignored protocol, endangered lives, and illegally seized community infrastructure. Delivery was flawless. She wasn't shouting, she was performing. Every sentence ended with applause from the crowd she'd carefully primed beforehand. When it was finally my turn to speak, I calmly walked up to the microphone. I held up my county permit, the survey map, and the official letter stating the land was private property. "This isn't community land," I said evenly. "It's my land. I followed every legal step, got county approval, and paid for the entire reconstruction myself. You're being misled. A few people nodded, but most sat in silence, uncertain. Karen smirked like she'd expected this. Of course you have papers, she said sweetly. Anyone can make papers, but this community has bylaws and you can't just rewrite those because it's convenient for you. Murmurs spread she was good, too good. The meeting ended with no resolution, but the damage was done. People walked out divided. Some came up to shake my hand quietly, others avoided me entirely. From that day on, the neighborhood wasn't the same. Karen began a campaign of petty warfare. Anonymous complaints to the city about construction noise at odd hours. Garbage bins mysteriously knocked over on pickup day. My mailbox stuffed with HOA notices, sometimes duplicates just to annoy me. Random strangers accidentally walking up my driveway to take photos for documentation. I didn't react. I kept everything documented: photos, dates, copies. My contractor finished the bridge, the inspector signed off, and I even installed solar lights to make the walkway safer at night. That's when Karen realized she couldn't win legally, so she turned personal. Rachel came home one afternoon looking upset. "What happened?" I asked. "She cornered me at the grocery store," Rachel sighed. "Said it, such a shame your husband doesn't care about the community." Then she told people in line we're refusing to pay our HOA dues, which is a lie. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was character assassination. Then came the petitions. Karen and her crew started going door to door, gathering signatures to restore community control of the bridge. The petition didn't have legal power, but it looked official. Some neighbors signed just to avoid conflict. Others genuinely believed her version of events. By the end of the month, she had dozens of signatures and presented them to the HOA board with dramatic flair. "See," she declared, "the community has spoken." The board members looked uncomfortable. They weren't stupid, they'd seen the legal documents, but they also didn't want to go against the loudest voice in the room. One of them finally said, "We'll review the petition and get back to you." Karen beamed. She wasn't winning legally, but she was winning socially, and she knew it. That night, Rachel sat beside me on the porch, watching the new bridge lights flicker on. "You know she's not going to stop," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "She's trying to wear you down." I looked at the bridge, solid steel beams, perfect construction, fully legal. "She not wearing me down," I said, "she's just digging her own hole." I wasn't planning revenge, not exactly. But I had started laying a trap. Karen thought she was playing chess. What she didn't realize was that I'd stopped playing defense a long time ago. For weeks, I quietly collected everything. Copies of every HOA notice. Screenshots of her emails and flyers. Footage from the security cameras showing her trespassing to take evidence. Audio clips from neighbors who admitted she'd twisted their words. I wasn't just enduring her anymore, I was building a case. Then one Tuesday morning, she made her biggest mistake. I woke up to find a bright orange construction fence stretched across the new bridge, complete with an unauthorized structure closed sign. At the end of the bridge stood Karen, arms crossed like a sheriff guarding her town. Behind her were two HOA board members looking deeply uncomfortable. "You can't block my property," I said, walking toward her. "This is community access," she snapped. "And we're exercising our right to restrict unsafe structures until the HOA approves them. It's already approved by the county, and I own this land." Smiled thinly. "Then you won't mind when the HOA removes it. Contractors will be here tomorrow to dismantle it." Wasn't bluffing, she'd actually scheduled a demolition crew. That was the moment I stopped holding back. "Karen," I said calmly, "you're trespassing, and you've vandalized a permitted structure. I suggest you leave before you make this worse." Laughed. "You won't do anything." I didn't argue, I just pulled out my phone and dialed the county sheriff's non-emergency line. When the deputy arrived, I showed him the survey, the county permit, and the security footage. Then I handed over the stack of HOA notices. Karen tried to interrupt, waving her binder like a sword. "This is a community issue." The deputy held up a hand. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the paperwork. This is private property. You're trespassing. Remove the fence now or face charges." Confident smile cracked. You can't, this is ridiculous. It's the law, the deputy said firmly. When the fence came down, something shifted. For the first time, the crowd saw her lose. I wasn't done. The next week, my lawyer sent a formal cease and desist letter to both Karen and the HOA, outlining defamation, trespassing, interference with private construction, harassment. It wasn't a lawsuit yet, but it was the loudest legal shot I'd fired so far. The HOA board panicked. The HOA board panicked. They called an emergency meeting not to attack me but to distance themselves from Karen. One board member even apologized privately, admitting we were scared of her, but she crossed a line. Karen's power started to crumble. Neighbors who'd avoided me began quietly stopping by to talk. Some apologized for signing her petition. Others admitted they'd been intimidated. Karen still strutted around, but the crowds were gone, her flyers disappeared, her emergency meetings fizzled. The bridge stood strong, lit up every night like a quiet victory. One evening, as Rachel and I sat on the porch, we saw Karen drive past slowly. She didn't stop, she didn't speak, she just stared at the bridge like it was mocking her. Rachel leaned over. Is it over? I smiled. No, it's just quiet now. Because with people like Karen, it's never truly over, but this time. I'd made it clear I wasn't the one who'd break. The bridge wasn't just rebuilt. It became a line she could never cross again.